Hello, sports fans. Jim Sproul, Michael Dugan here, VIP Sportsnet, bringing you another exciting show. Michael, I saw something today. It came out on the NFL.com. It had their modern era people eligible for the NFL Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I saw the list. The list is about 122 names, 63 offense, 43 defense, and 16.
So what I think would be cool, we could just go through each position and just say if there's anybody in there, we're going to each pick 6 players, and we'll just say what what 6 players we'll pick. So I'll just start us off. Quarterbacks. Was there any in there grab you?
Not really. I was more looking at the running back position.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had more than 6 picks, I would have picked Boomer Esiason.
Yeah.
Coming from, that was my heyday of,
Let's just kind of go through this right quick. The quarterbacks that were out there were Randall Cunningham, Jake Delhomme, Boomer Esiason, Jeff Garcia, Jeff Hostetler, Dave Krieg, and Donovan McNabb. And you're going to go, no?
I did not pick either one of them on my top 6, but if I had to pick one more, I would have picked Boomer Esiason.
Okay. Yeah, there was none in there that did anything for me. And my criteria, I'm kind of like, were you one of the 3 best players at your position, your era? That's my criteria.
See, in my day, when I was collecting baseball cards as a little kid, I remember watching a Boomer Esiason and Randall Cunningham.
Sure, that was a wheelhouse.
Yeah, Dave Craig from the Seattle.
I remember fumble.
Yeah, most fumbles ever in NFL history. So I remember those players growing up. But I just remember Boomer Esiason, just because he went to Super Bowl once. He went from Cincinnati, then he went to the Jets. I mean, that's the only way I would have picked him.
Yeah, there was none in there. And I'm looking at it. If you have to think about it, no. So I was out on those guys. Running backs: Sean Alexander, Mike Allstott, Tiki Barber, Ernest Biner, Larry Centers, Corey Dillon, Eddie George, Priest Holmes, Edrin James, Daryl Johnston, Thomas Jones, Maurice Jones-Drew, Eric Metcalf, Lorenzo Neal, Clinton Portis, Fred Taylor, Herschel Walker, Chris Warren, and Ricky Waters. There's a lot in there, man.
Yeah, that was a mouthful you just said of players. I picked Herschel Walker.
Wow. So did I. I mean, I know that's the homer, the homer in me and everything, but
I thought, honestly, when I saw his name, I thought he was already in the Hall of Fame. So when I was like, oh, man, I was going to pick him because he should be already in there just because of his stats. 61 touchdown rushes, over 8,000 yards rushing. I mean, that's who I would have picked.
Well, see, and the reason I went with it, I'm going to admit I'm a homer on this, but I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, Pro Football Hall of Fame, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he also played in the USFL, where he gained another 5,562 yards. For those 3 seasons, he averaged almost 5 yards a carry at 4.9. So if you take that 5,562 and add it with his 8,000, he would be 6th all-time leading rusher in NFL history at 13,787. And, I mean, the guy caught a ton of passes, kickoff returns. I mean, the last 3 or 4 years he was in the league, he was mostly just a kick returner.
Right.
And when you were with the Cowboys, he was 23 yards a return. I mean, the guy, wow. Yeah, that's amazing. That one year, he had 2,400 yards rushing, which is still a record in pro football, and 5.5 yards a carry. He had 37 receptions that year. Almost 467 yards.
Almost 4,900 yards receiving. I mean,
NFL?
Yeah.
And he added another 1,400 in the USFL. So he had over 5,000 yards receiving, 13,000 yards rushing. I mean, yeah. And I mean, it was hard for me to do that because you're sitting there looking at and Edgerrin James, Eddie George,
injured. James was injured. George, had his good years, bad years. He wasn't.
You know what? But when we're talking about, my thing is, were you ever one of the three best at your position? When I'm going through here, I'm like, well, at one time maybe Sean Alexander was. Eddie George dang sure was. Priest Holmes was for a 2 or 3 year period, catching and receiving. Edgerrin James certainly was.
Now, Sean Alexander broke the most touchdown runs in a season. I think that's been broken, but that was over 25.
What about Fred Taylor?
Fred Taylor out of Jacksonville.
He was a top 10,
yeah,
or close to a top 15 rusher of all time. So, so we both start off with one running back. Okay, that was fun right there. Wide receivers. Did you pick any?
I picked Gary Clark.
Really? Washington Redskins?
Yes.
Okay, here's who we had on that list. We had Isaac Bruce, Gary Clark, Donald Driver, Henry Ellard, Torrey Holt, Chad Johnson, Derek Mason, Mushin Muhammad, Jimmy Smith, Rod Smith, Hines Ward, and Reggie Wayne. Quite frankly, the reason I said no on any of these, I think there's too many wide receivers in already. I mean, with the proliferation of the passing game, these guys' stats will just blow guys like Lynn Swann and Drew Pearson away, where if you put them out there playing in their times, Drew Pearson's better than every one of these guys. In his time, Drew Pearson's better than these guys were in their time. And I just think there's too many of them. For me, call me the old curmudgeon, but that's the way I look at it.
There are some players on there that I was really shocked, like Chad Johnson. I mean,
dude, he caught a ton of passes, man. He came in at the right time, and they threw the ball. But out of that list, I mean, Isaac Bruce, man, him and Torrey Holt, golly.
I mean, I know Rod Smith, former Denver Bronco.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't pick him.
What about Hines Ward? I mean, there you go. There's an all-purpose wide receiver right there. I mean, he'd get his nose bloodied. He'd go out there and block. He'd do the dirty work. I mean, he'd show up in big games. But yeah, I didn't pick him. So you picked Gary Clark.
Yes.
Okay.
699 catches, over 10,000 yards, 65 touchdowns. I mean, now is during the heyday of Joe Gibbs.
Yeah.
Doug Williams, Mark Ripken being on that team.
Did he play with Theismann ever?
I'm not too sure. I mean, I just remember him back in the
Jay Schrader and Mark Rippon and Doug Williams for that part of those seasons.
I remember him burning the Broncos in the Super Bowl, And,
I think he's still catching passes on those guys right now. Okay, tight ends. We had Dallas Clark, Ben Coates, Keith Jackson, Brent Jones, Jeremy Shockey, and Wesley Walls. Did you pick any of those guys?
I did not.
You didn't go no tight ends?
I didn't know tight ends. Just nothing stood out to me.
If Jeremy Shockey, if he wouldn't have got his head so full of himself, maybe. I mean, Keith Jackson, boy, he was as talented as you could
from
get.
Philadelphia. I remember him playing in Philadelphia.
He was so talented. And, Ben Coates.
From the Colts. From the Patriots.
He caught 1,000,000 passes.
It was always him. I remember him going against Shannon Sharp. Every year, those two would have either number one or number two, and then Tony Gonzalez was in there too, of tight ends in my era.
So you didn't pick any?
Nope.
All right, next, offensive lineman. We had Willie Anderson, Matt Burke, Tony Baselli, Lomas Brown, Ray Donaldson, Alan Faneca, Kevin Gogan, Jordan Gross, Chris Hinton, Kent Hull, Steve Hutchinson, Lincoln Kennedy, Olin Kreutz, Chris Samuels, Jeff Saturday, Brian Waters, Richmond Webb, Eric Williams, and Steve Wisniewski.
Did you pick anyone in this one?
I picked 3, and,
really?
I could have picked 6, but okay. I went with Lomas Brown, Richmond Webb, and Alan Faneca. Those guys were dominant ball players, man. And if I wanted to just add more, I would have went with Tony Baselli.
See, I picked him.
I would have picked Steve Hutchinson, and probably would have picked Steve Wozniacki. I remember watching him in high school. Then he went to Penn State, and then, the Cowboys drafted him and immediately traded him to the Raiders. But, I mean, there's a lot of those guys that are just awesome players. And I don't think there's enough offensive linemen in there. But these guys, I mean, boy, Richmond Webb, Dan Marino didn't have to worry about anything over there on that left side.
I remember, like you said, when I started watching sports, it was in the mid 80s, and I remember him in 90s on, doing
Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Then Lomas Brown out of Florida, Detroit. I mean, had the funky stance, but he was just so solid. Was it 5 or 6 time Pro Bowler? And then Alan Faneca, I mean, dude, that guy's as good as you can get. I mean, that guy's multiple position kind of player, guard, center, wherever you wanted to play him, he was dominant. And I loved watching those offensive line because I'm not a ball follower when I'm watching games. I'll isolate and watch.
You watch how they protect the quarterback.
I love to watch a craftsman I love to watch somebody doing things with excellence, and watching these guys, it was just textbook to watch them. Who'd you pick?
I picked Tony
Baselli.
Yes,
and I know why you're gonna pick him. The reason I didn't is just his career got shortened.
Right.
He always come out there. What he wear like 8th grade shoulder pads.
Yeah.
Then what ended his career? Oh yeah, a shoulder injury. But that guy, USC, just incredible player, man. It was just cut short. I loved watching him play. Was he the only one you picked?
He's the only one I picked in that.
What made you pick him?
Just because I rarely saw him injured. He always played if he wasn't in pain, but he was on the Ravens. To me, he just stood out to me that I remember watching game video of him growing up.
And I loved watching him. Alrighty, next, I've got a feeling you might pick somebody from here. Defensive lineman, John Abraham, Leroy Glover, Casey Hampton, Chester McLaughlin, Leslie O'Neal, Simeon Rice, Richard Seymour, Justin Smith, Neil Smith, Greg Townsend, and Bryant Young. Did you pick anybody? Don't tell me the name. Did you pick one?
Nope.
Really? I figured you would have picked Neil Smith.
Nope. Neil Smith, a rival when there was the Chiefs.
But he did come play for y'all.
Yeah, he got us 2 Super Bowls. John only took a pay cut to get him signed up because he got tired of him sacking him. So, but I did not pick anyone.
I didn't either. I didn't either. I look at this. I thought about going with Bryant Young, but because he was dominant. But
now, who else was on that list?
John Abraham, Leroy Glover, Casey Hampton, Chester McLaughlin, Leslie O'Neal, Simeon Rice, Richard Seymour, Justin Smith, Neil Smith, Greg Townsend, and Bryant Young.
Nothing.
Yeah. All right. I didn't pick. What about linebackers? Let's go see if you picked any of these boys. Carl Banks, Cornelius Bennett, Lance Briggs, Teddy Bruschi, James Ferrier, London Fletcher, Seth Joyner, Wilbur Marshall, Clay Matthews, Willie McGinnis, Sam Mills, Chris Spielman, Takeo Spikes, Darryl Talley, Zach Thomas, Jesse Tuggle, and Patrick Willis.
Jim, I will give you my answer on who I picked when we get back from this commercial.